Good evening and welcome to this edition on June 20th, 2016, coming to you from Cambridge Community Television. Our program, of course, for our regular viewers is What We Should Know, also called Peaceworker Radio. It's the Bernie Sanders support show. There's a reason why we support Bernie Sanders. That's what we'll be speaking about today. Today's program is about voter fraud, about the scandal, the incredible scandal, and the efforts by many activists to launch suits in courts, federal courts, or state Supreme Courts, if that's possible. In Massachusetts, one has to go through the Superior Court in order to get to the state Supreme Court, called the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court. Massachusetts is one aspect. Locally, we hope to file a suit in Superior Court here in Massachusetts, a class action suit, and now allowing any other citizen of Massachusetts to join this suit against the Democratic Party, against the officers of the Massachusetts Democratic Organizing Committee, the Democratic Party Organizing Committee, for their role in allowing Bill Clinton, the mayor of the city of Boston, and other politicians for disrupting political polling on primary day here in Massachusetts. Bill Clinton was proud to do this. Marty Walsh was proud to be one of the gun toters for this Clinton-esque, and I'll use the term Clinton-esque because it's not only Bill Clinton who continues to inspire criminal and quasi-criminal activities by his wife. He will be the first husband or the first man of the White House rather than the first lady of the White House. It's a dynasty. It's the effort to get Chelsea in 2024 to run for the position of President of the United States, just as Bush continues to do that, just as the Kennedy dynasty will continue to do that. This is completely uncalled for. We do not need dynasties here in the United States. We need democracy. But the reality is we have late capitalism. We have a definitely an elitist system, a system so that the billionaires are calling all the shots since the Supreme Court's decision of Citizens United, and the unending amount of money which can be pumped into elections. Just to say on point, the crisis in the political arena at this time is one of the complete disintegration of democratic concept of democracy, of one man, one vote, but rather the criminal manipulation, as was the case in the 2000 election, in which Gore conceded the election to Bush. No reason for conceding that election. No reason for allowing, at a time in which global warming was the question of that election. We're talking about 16 years ago. We all know what Bush did. We all know what Cheney did. We all know what Rumsfeld did. We all know about Gonzalez. We know about the criminal elements and the unending crisis established by the Republican Party, the criminal party, but aided by the Democratic Party, because there was no reason for Gore to concede that election. But his father was a governor or highly connected political operative. So there's no reason why he shouldn't do this. But the clear reality is that the criminal system in the United States is closely connected with the political system. We know this not just recently through the activities of voter fraud, but also through the activities of voter manipulation through Diebold, the system which automatically counted votes, which was driven out of business and bought by another corporation, renamed and now functioning, flourishing again in this election cycle by vote manipulation, false tabulation, and joining in the ideas of not counting votes, counting one vote as 1/10 of one vote, eliminating, purging the voter rolls from Bernie supporters. They're easy to find. They're young. They're in their early 20s. They're voting for the first time. It's easy to select them and purge them from the voter rolls. We can see these types of problems developing, but our idea, again, in today's program is to show how it's possible to launch a suit, do an investigation, and get file a suit, and in the process of discovery, which is something that the courts will allow plaintiffs to do, plaintiffs can file a suit against defendants. In the case of Massachusetts, it has to be in a superior court. If one is filing against the state of Massachusetts, perhaps it's possible to file in federal court as a federal issue. Perhaps it's then also possible as a class action suit by a pro se litigant. Pro se litigant is an individual who represents themselves. A class action suit would be anyone who feels that their rights have been infringed by the defendant named in the class action, can then bring forward and join the suit by signing their names on the dotted line and becoming a member of the suit against the Democratic Party or against the individual named. That's what we're researching. But the idea of all of this is to get discovery. Discovery is information which the defendant named in the case has to provide the plaintiffs. It has to be factual. It has to have, in response to the questions that are formed in the suit, which the court then analyzes and then answers the content of the suit. So these are processes we're looking for, and we're hoping to do that, as do other pro se litigants in the near future, and this is the reason for today's show. And without further ado, let's see if we can get this show on the road. It looks like this is going to be possible.
Hi everyone, this is Debbie. Welcome to the Sane Progressive YouTube video series that seeks to inject some sanity into the modern American dialogue. I do have for you today the interview with Bob Petrakis, who is an election integrity activist and one of the attorneys involved with the lawsuits that were discussed in the video Protecting Our Elections. That was shared on trustvote.org, and that is the website for the Institute for American Democracy and Election Integrity. Lot of interest in those lawsuits. In the video, they did say that they were to be filed on June 6th. That date came and went, and people were wondering if they were still going to move forward. There was a delay. California happened. There was an obscene amount of election fraud and voting irregularities in California, which we discussed in this interview. And they needed to do a delay so that they could include the evidence to introduce it into their filings and motions. So we'll talk much more about that in the interview. If you are unfamiliar with who Bob Petrakis is, he is an attorney, as I said, a professor of political science at Columbus State Community College, political author and writer with 5 published works, also co-authored with Harvey Wasserman, did George W. Bush steal America's 2004 election, essential documents, and what happened in Ohio. And his partner in this, who is the lead attorney, is Cliff Arnebeck, who is the chair of the Legal Affairs Committee of Common Cause Ohio and a national co-chair and attorney for the Alliance of Democracy. He is a Harvard-educated lawyer, graduate of Harvard Law School, highly credible individuals, highly credentialed individuals. I will give you the biographies of the people involved with this case in the video description below. If you are unfamiliar with the issue of election fraud, it is not surprising that there is a corporate media blackout. If you would like to bring yourself up to speed for the crash course, you can go to the election fraud blog, election fraud 2016.com, and the evidence, information, and documentation is arranged by state. So I want to share with you the interview. There was a few technical difficulties, but 95% of the interview, the audio and sound was pretty clean. There's a few pops here and there, and Bob is a bit mushed to one side of the screen, but overall pretty clean, and it gives the information that you need to know, and it also gives you the answers to the questions that you have been asking me. So I'd like to thank Bob Petrakis for joining me yesterday, and he also has agreed very graciously to come back and update us when the lawsuits are filed. So thank you very much, Bob Petrakis. And without further ado.
I'm glad to be here.
So thrilled to have you on. I'm sure my viewers are going to be really interested in what you have to say. After the announcement and the video that came out, it went viral from the Institute for American Democracy and Election Integrity. That's trustvote.org. You guys had announced on June 6th that there were going to be legal actions pending, lawsuits filed pending on June 6th, but that didn't go through. Was that due to the election fraud that occurred in California?
Had a lot to do with the what I consider a coup d'etat in California. I'm real reluctant to call it an election because it appears to be, in total numbers, one of the largest purges of voters and I think rigging of an election in the history of this nation.
I did some numbers on California. I pulled them up earlier. And right now, as the current vote total stands in California, the total number of votes between both of them is 3,442,623. There are still 2.6 million votes out, provisional ballots and voting ballots. And that means 43% of the votes haven't even been counted yet.
Well, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. We've seen earlier patterns like this in New York and in Arizona. And if you look at our book on what happened in Ohio, that and prior to it on a smaller scale in Florida, were test runs on how to rig elections. We live in a world of mega and metadata and geospatial prisms and softwares. All of this has leaked over into elections, so now you can perfectly purge the Sanders supporters, and you can play a lot of games if you know the rules and what's in effect in a given state, right? We have 50 different state systems, and within that, 8,000 different election authorities, from 5,000 or so county levels to municipal registrars. So all of these systems make it impossible to have a transparent system. And it gives tremendous advantage to the people that are the party regulars, the apparatus that is in fact supporting Hillary Clinton, as well as the private technicians that come in as well.
I did see something interesting. I don't know if you saw this particular piece of information. I know where you are in Ohio. You were involved in, you've written about what happened in Ohio in 2004 with the election fraud that was going to, that went down there. Did you know that the person who is the San Diego election...
Michael Vu, I'm very familiar with Michael Vu, and in fact, I sent a warning column when Michael Vu went to San Diego. My thought is someday he would be involved in a massive scandal. Mr. Vu was technically the Democrat in charge of Cuyahoga County, where Cleveland is. Michael Vu distinguished himself by purging, allowing to be purged 24.96% of every single voter in Cuyahoga County in the city of Cleveland that voted 81, the city voted 81% Democrat for John Kerry. So a quarter of their voters. And it was done in a racist manner. The more a precinct was black, the higher the purge level. In some overwhelmingly black precincts, Mr. Vu allowed more than 51% of all the voters to, in fact, be purged, including many black soldiers who were fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq. This is known as the Buffalo Soldiers Purge. They were sent challenge letters from the Republican Party, and they weren't in the country to get them, and he allowed them to be purged. He's one of the leading election manipulators in America, and he also had one of the highest rates of not counting provisionals. If your name went slightly below the line, he would purge you. If the same information was on the inside ballot,
Yes.
but you left your zip code off on the outside ballot, even though they gave you the ballot with the address on it, they would purge the vote. So he's a specialist in two things: stripping American citizens from the voting rolls and not counting provisional ballots. That's Mr. Vu's specialty.
Yes. Now, for my viewers,
And people underneath him went to jail.
what?
The people underneath him at Cuyahoga County, why he stepped down, they rigged the recount in 2004. They pre-counted and then submitted as a random recount ballots they had already counted and knew would match.
Oh, well, now for people who are not aware of what happened we're talking about the voter manipulation that occurred in Ohio back in 2004 when the elections between John Kerry and George W. Bush. And there was a lot of scandal around that. Most people understand what happened between George W. Bush in Florida and Gore, but not as many people are aware that there was mass election fraud. And right now, what we're talking about is the fact that the San Diego Elections Registrar is a convicted Ohio election official who was the director of Cuyahoga County in Ohio. So they were in a big...
He lost his job or left. He wasn't convicted, but the people under him were convicted of rigging the recount.
Okay.
For
All right. Well, thank you for the clarification. So, have you had any reports specifically coming into you or your affiliates about things that you saw in California that were particularly troubling?
We're getting report. There's 2 or 3 patterns. Number one, the massive amount of provisional or affidavit ballots that had to be submitted. I'm getting reports from precinct people. 60% of my precinct had to vote provisionally. 25% had to vote provisionally. Also, preliminary data from scientific exit polls in the northern part of the state is indicating that voters overwhelmingly are saying they voted at a higher rate for Bernie Sanders than Hillary Clinton, but those aren't reflected in the official numbers. I was actually...
Where are you getting that anticipation? I heard that there was gonna be some independent exit polls. Did Trust vote, the election?
Yes, Trust Vote actually did limited scientific random exit polling in anticipation for what we thought would be voter manipulation. And we have that information. That data is being crunched now. The preliminary reports are showing in certain precincts, the Sanders vote, 12% higher than that which is reported.
Okay, that's not surprising, and to put that in context for people, a lot of people have a difficult time understanding why the discrepancy between the exit polls and the official results is such an important thing. But if you understand that the United States State Department, when they look at elections in other countries, a discrepancy of 2% outside the margin of error with an exit poll is grounds to call for an investigation for fraud into an election. And when you're seeing 12%, like Bob is talking about here, it is a huge, huge red.
Before these still.
So we're very pleased to rebroadcast this information in reference to voter fraud from an organization whose website is Common Cause Ohio. You can also find them in electionfraud2016.org, electionfraud2016.org, and we'll have the information again at the end of the program. It's just a comment that I would like to bring here to our viewers regarding this development. The election of 2000 with George W. Bush and Al Gore was stolen. And the Supreme Court of the United States authorized the theft. The Supreme Court has no business whatsoever in interpreting the election results. It has no business whatsoever in determining who is president of the United States. And the Democratic Party with Al Gore as their candidate had no business whatsoever in allowing George Bush to win the election. The crisis was clear then. The crisis was repeated again in 2004, as we've heard, concerning Ohio in 2004, where it was Florida in 2000, and who knows, it apparently will be California in the primaries now, because the scandal in reference to not only 41% of the votes having been counted in the primary in California, in which Hillary Clinton declared she had the delegate count sufficient to be able to be named the Democratic presidential candidate over Bernie Sanders. The reality is that these scandals continue to come about, that there needs to be a much simpler system, an identifiable system in which we as voters in the United States can confirm the fact who we voted for, who it was tallied to, what candidate it was tallied to, and the vote was actually counted. There needs to be some kind of a system. When we go in and take our credit cards and buy a donut at anybody's donut shop, we ask for a copy of the receipt, right? A copy of the charge, and we get a printed copy. Why isn't it possible for these kinds of things to happen exactly at the voting polls? It's not a donut we're asking for, it's a goddamn vote in the election system in the United States. So that's what we need. That's not what we're getting, and we need to have a dramatic change in this. Our candidate here, Bernie Sanders, has mentioned money in politics. He could have addressed the entire voting system, but he didn't. That's what we're addressing. Sanders mentioned money in politics, and it's the tens of hundreds of millions of dollars that candidates have. The elitist Donald Trump being one of them, Hillary Clinton being another one of them, the Koch brothers, etc., with vast amounts of money in this political system, allowing a gigantic cadre of individuals working to manipulate the returns of the election. That's not necessary. It's never been necessary. The United States should not be a fourth world nation. We need a voting system which responds to the will of the people, and damn it, that's what should be subject matter. We're calling upon activists to file suits in federal court as a class action suit by a pro se individual filing his own case, demanding that should be in the suit, demanding a response to the election officials of the Democratic Party in the state or in the federal district where the suit is filed, a suit allowing others whose rights have been violated in the same federal district or in the same state to take part in this suit. That would be the type of suit. Then would be a class action suit. I believe that indigent individuals, people with no money, the poor, the working class, who don't have money to file this suit to pay the entry fees, can ask that they be waived, and they are waived. And if they're not waived, one can appeal that. So this is the call for justice in reference to Bernie Sanders. And we get back to our program. Thank you ever so much for your interest in our show today. That's where we are.
Elections in 2004, the personal computer of the Ohio Democratic Party chairman was stolen, and 2 counties, including Toledo, where numerous voters were purged in violation of the law. In Toledo, in Cleveland, and Cincinnati, in a year they're not supposed to purge, an election year, they purged 305,000 voters. And what the mainstream media will say, well, you know, they purged some Dems and some Republicans. Absolute lie. It has a political science. They're purging in black, minority, poor neighborhoods. They're purging in neighborhoods that vote 80, 90% Democratic in 2004. And that's what they're doing here. They're clearly targeting. And that's what they did here in Ohio. They purged numerous voters in Athens, Ohio University, and they forced virtually all of the students living in Athens County, where Ohio University is, living in the city, to vote provisional. And then you can discount those votes. Usually in Ohio, 17% of those will never be counted. This is a deliberate, precise data attack on the core of the Sanders campaign.
Yeah, and they do disenfranchise the provisional ballots. There was, I think, only 20% of the provisional ballots got included into the final count in New York. Why do you think Senator Sanders is not addressing this? I know that myself and many other election integrity activists across the country have been, putting out red flags, red alerts. We've been writing the campaign. We've had meetings with the campaign. They will not respond, and they will not address this issue. What do you think is going on with that? Why are the candidates themselves who are armed? They run these campaigns. They spend millions of dollars. They do all this work, but then they don't say a word when they're stolen. What is going on with that?
Well, I would hope that Sanders, he still has time. And also, what makes it difficult for a lot of the attorneys, he's the guy with the standing, right? He's the person directly harmed. So I would hope that he would step up and file suit. We know the history, right? Is when when they shifted 20,000 votes in Volusia County in 2000 in the Bush-Gore campaign, right? When they accidentally added a glitch, ES&S, the largest vote counter in America, the private company, added 16,000 votes to Bush and subtracted 4,000 from Gore, giving him a quick 20,000 vote jump. That's what allowed John Ellis, the first cousin of George W. Bush, on a 30-day contract from Fox News to call the election for Bush. It was called on a deliberate computer glitch and at that point, they could say, we really won, and all the other channels, right, the broadcast networks, Impact Journalism followed along. This was done because of a so-called computer glitch. So then you have to worry about being a sore loser. John Kerry, I briefed John Kerry in 2004. I was on the phone with the Reverend Jesse Jackson. I was his attorney, and we asked John Kerry about this, and he made it very clear he knew where the machines were melting down in Arizona and in New Mexico, that they were, his numbers weren't what they were supposed to be. But again, I think there's tremendous pressure not to call into question election rigging in the US because of all the propaganda about us being the greatest democracy in the world. Although, I'm an academic, I'm aware that we're 47th out of 47 in long-standing democracies, right? That we're the worst. And I'm also aware, as you shared, I think the brilliant, response from the Carter Center on why they don't observe American elections.
Yeah, I know, we don't meet the basic standards to have the mechanisms in place where they can monitor it. So they will not come in and monitor our elections. It is disheartening. I would hope, I have not given up on campaign. It's my firm belief that we cannot remain silent in the face of a criminal act because we're worried about being called a name.
There was a coup in California.
Yes.
There was not an election.
Thank you.
There was a coup d'etat.
Yes.
And, if we want to be a banana republic, we already are. These scenes should be taped off. Police should be there. Forensic computer experts should be breaking down the machine. If we held them to the same standard as casino machines, we would be doing much better. They have squads that come in when they think machines are crooked.
We appreciate the opportunity to rebroadcast electionfraud2016.org program. And Bob Petrakis, concerning the voter fraud, the Democratic National Convention, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the state representatives for the Democratic Party, Bill Clinton, Marty Walsh here in Massachusetts, who have led the struggle to defraud the public in Massachusetts and across the nation in electing and seeing that Hillary Clinton is the Democratic Party nominee for this election. It's not different than George W. Bush stealing of the election in 2000. It's the Democratic Party, however, now who is manipulating and stealing the election. So it makes really no goddamn difference at all who's stealing the election. The Democrats are not better than the Republicans. Bush is not any different from Clinton. Clinton preceded Bush, and this Clinton is in place because of the willingness of the Democratic Party establishment to manipulate and defraud the public. This is not my opinion. This is not an old bald-headed guy's opinion. This is reality. It's been confirmed, and protests have been put in across the United States in reference to these fraudulent acts, the stealing of votes. And now we have Hillary Clinton, who is now going to run against Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a bigot, he's a misogynist, he's a racist, he has no integrity whatsoever. Donald Trump is a scam and has been a scam. Why would anyone want Donald Trump to be president? Well, the answer to that is the same answer to why bullies in the United States are given so much support. Why is it that bullies are loved, are worshipped, are looked up to? Bullies in the United States are really riding high. Sports figures across the board, many of them bullies. Police, fire department, politicians, bullies across the board. If there's an exception, well, let's get a look at the exception. It's definitely the rule. The business people, corporations, military, it's all about bullying. The process of breaking down the psyche of a young recruit traumatizes them. After they're traumatized in the military, then they're sent into battle. They're re-traumatized. After they're re-traumatized and the military is finished with them, they simply send them home. They are no longer capable of working in a normal relationship, in a family relationship, in a business relationship, in a personal relationship, because they've been traumatized. That is the purpose of the military system, to break down the individual, to create another type of being, one who simply responds to commands, such as in the police, there's a hierarchy, the military, there's a hierarchy. There's a hierarchy also in politics, and that's clear. If you don't know about that, then you don't know about politics. This is the reality. We're getting back to our program now. Thanks for joining us. And we thank again truthvote.org for this the terrific interview. And we encourage our viewers at home to watch this. Thanks so much for taking part in our program.
Tape them off and they bring in their forensic computer experts and get to the bottom of why the machines aren't paying off. Here, when you have blatant theft and systematic targeting of voters of a candidate, it's supposed to be, you're a sore loser if you don't go along with election rigging. And I would encourage Sanders to go along with what Jill Stein is saying. The Justice Department needs to come in. Cyber squads needs to come in. People need to be arrested. Michael Vu would be at the top of my list. And they need to be held accountable for the purging and the violation of the Voting Rights Act.
Okay. All right, well, everybody's gonna ask me, when do you think the next action's gonna be filed? I'm just gonna ask you, and everybody's gonna ask you.
The California, I think there's an agreement that after California, that it has to be a federal action. I think, I'm hoping within the week. My role in this has changed. Originally, I was the leading expert witness, and then at one point, I was actually going to file in Ohio because, I've run for office. I'm actually running for prosecutor in Franklin County on the pledge that I will arrest, if I'm elected, I would arrest the Secretary of State. So it's my campaign plank here in Franklin County. I don't know what else to do with these people. Somebody, if I can't convict him, he needs a good frog walking. People are afraid to, these election officials have to be accountable. And now, so I'm not the attorney anymore. I'm back to being, one of the lead witnesses. But I think, hopefully within the week, and hopefully we'll get discovery that'll go across across the nation, because it's just not Ohio. It's just, the fact that they stole the, 9% of the vote here seems to end up in Hillary's numbers when in reality that didn't happen. The exit polls tell us that didn't happen. But you've now got at least 13 states, and other places like DC and Puerto Rico, which should be considered crime scenes. So we're hoping within the week to get that out. Again, originally we were rushing to do one thing. The initial, we wanted to file it prior to the elections to get access to the adjusted numbers. But the counter move, notices were sent out to the Edison research groups that does exit polling, as well as to the consortium to hold their records, because there was a lawsuit coming. But they responded, of course, by simply canceling the exit polls. And the AP then, which basically can't do simple math, suddenly discovered that Hillary had already won.
I know. The AP certainly can't do simple math because it's reporting 100% of precincts reporting right now in California, well, 43% of the vote is out. So it's so blatant. It's so disheartening. Who is the lead lawyer on this right now? Is that Cliff Arnbeck? Is he the one?
Yeah, Cliff Arnbeck is the lead attorney. And at this point, I'm an expert witness in the case, primarily because everything you're now seeing on a large scale happened in Ohio in 2004.
All right. Well, that at least gets us on the same page of what is going on now, because I think people are just feeling just so deflated. They're ready for this revolution, and Sanders isn't speaking out on the fraud. She's been coronated and being installed into this Democratic presidential nomination. So people are just like, they're just hanging their hat on your lawsuit. And I'm trying to tell people that these things take time and they take, organization.
And there's also another lawsuit that'll be coming out of California.
So thanks again. Thanks for trustvote.org and for this interview with Bob Petrakis, who is a professor at Columbia State Community College, as I've been informed. It's all about Common Cause Ohio and electionfraud2016.org. If you go to election fraud 2016 and election fraud, F-R-A-U-D, electionfraud.org. electionfraud2016.org, you'll find this program, and we're going to be posting this as well on YouTube. I believe you can find this on YouTube as well. So why are we interrupting this very interesting program again? We're interested in commenting always on the ideas which the interviews show. My particular position is, as a pro se litigant, pro se meaning an individual who files a suit in his own behalf, not as an attorney and not with an attorney, but as the plaintiff. The individual who files a suit against another is called a plaintiff. The defendant is the individual against whom the suit has been filed. My call is for every individual who feels that their vote has not been counted in these primary season, in any of the states, any of the primary states, who feels that their one man, one vote has been violated, not counted correctly, only counted partially, that his vote was disappeared, that his vote was purged, that he was purged from the roll, she was purged from the roll, couldn't vote, couldn't find the voting place, had the wrong information sent to them, etc., etc., etc. Anyone who finds that they, or believes that they have been unjustifiably not counted in this election, go to court. That's the idea. Don't worry about the what it's going to cost. Don't worry about what's going to happen. Make your experience. It's like taking a vacation. You know, you take a vacation, you pay your money, you go to the airport, you get in the check-in line, but look at it, the lawsuit, as something that you need to do as a person, as a human being, simply to defend your dignity. It's not going to be horrific. Standing in front of a judge, speaking one's experience, speaking about one's problem, political problem, in reference to what happened to one when one tried to vote, is particularly legitimate. It's not anything to be ashamed of. It's not anything that one should avoid. It's something that we, in this age of late capitalism, with a candidate like Donald fucking Trump, that is serious, serious business. It's serious business to have an individual like Donald Trump, who has apparently no integrity whatsoever, and anyone who has experienced Trump's call and name-calling, his bluffing, his bullying, his ignorant ranting, his self-centered attitudes, his calls for a carpet bombing of the Middle East, again, his calls for prohibiting Muslims from entering the United States, from sending 12 million Mexican Americans back to Mexico, for drastic arming of dictatorships throughout the world with atomic weapons. He is completely irresponsible. It makes no sense to me why anyone would possibly vote for Donald Trump. But it's not about Donald Trump. It's about the Democratic Party candidate. It's about Hillary Clinton. It's about the stealing of the election. And when an election is stolen, then not only is it a question of for whom the election was stolen, but who steals the election from the person who stole the election. The elitists do not want Hillary Clinton. The financial elitists, the Koch brothers, and the billionaires on Wall Street do not want Hillary Clinton, perhaps, to be President of the United States. Their first call, believe me, is Donald Trump. Believe me, it's Donald Trump. Because Trump is so corrupted and so bigoted that they would be able to get everything passed immediately by Donald Trump just by giving him money, because that's the only thing that interests him. Status and money. That's the reason he's running. He's running in the interest of the Koch brothers. He's running in the interest of the billionaire class. Hillary is doing it well, but Hillary is running as a Democrat and not as a individual who just recently discovered the Republican Party, and the Republican Party discovering Trump and finding out what a wonderful candidate he would make, a racist, a bigot, a bully, a misogynist, a criminal entrepreneur. That's Donald Trump. So let's get back to the interview, please, and thanks for following us today.
Yeah, I think we've spawned not only just the lawsuit we're working on, but my understanding is, isn't there supposed to be one in Massachusetts?
That was filed.
Yeah, there's supposed to be a filing in Illinois. We've been talking to people. So I think on some level, lawyers everywhere shouldn't wait for one suit, but in all of these, 13 or so states that had blatant corruption, suits should be filed everywhere, because what we need, whether there's political judges throwing them out or not, we need to get into the public record what happened, so everybody knows when the convention comes, and that there should be a re-credentialing of delegates. From my count and many other people's, Sanders won this election. He deserves to have his delegates. And I'm hoping if they don't treat him fairly, and again, I believe they should confess to their crimes, or there should be no peace at that convention. And I hope that Sanders delegates walk out unless they get some justice regarding the blatant stealing of elections and the recent coup in California.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. I'm working with the Bernie or Bust delegates. I'm going to be down in Philadelphia. We're going to be coordinating and talking about things in real time to plan action in response to what happens to that convention. And I think it's very powerful that you said that, and I want to share that with them. So you're going to be working on these lawsuits. I know people want to help. Is there anywhere they can donate? Is there anything that they can do? Because they feel powerless, they want to act, they want to help.
Well, then go to votetrust.org or my site, thefreepress.org. I've run a nonprofit since 1986, and just earmark the money for the lawsuit. And again, another thing, Harvey Wasserman and I wrote a book called The Strip and Flip Selection, not election, but selection of 2016. And the last chapter spells out and documents in great detail how this has been done consistently since 2000. And that, quite frankly, and I suspect it's because Bernie wanted a political revolution, and he's gotten more votes than any open democratic socialist in the history of this country, is that they deliberately targeted him because of his message, because of his political revolution, that he actually pulled it off. So the only way they can keep the status quo in place, you know, the neocon war policies, the crony capitalism, the intervening in countries like Libya and Syria, and the type of endless war, is by stealing the vote of the people.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely disheartening to see what they're doing, and I think that the worst part is the collusion of the media with the politicians to do that, because it's very much a coordinated effort. Now, I know Cliff had talked about in the video from the Trust Vote site that they were talking about doing a lawsuit on going after the media. Is that possible?
Yeah, I think for discovery, and what we discover would indicate whether or not, right, if they know this stuff is happening, you know, their internal memo, I don't know how they can, right? They have people around there that understand statistics, right? They've got to know that their polls are showing, the unadjusted polls, different results. Now, they've got people like Joshua Holland of The Nation, Mother Jones, and people at Alternet, what we consider progressive gatekeepers, attacking us as conspiracy theorists. The problem, you know, by suggesting that they use exit polls to call election, the reality is they do. Our State Department does. The American, you know, the Agency on International Development sets guidelines for this stuff that works for the State Department. So, anyone who's watched TV, I was watching in Ohio when CNN called the election, and there was not a single precinct that had reported from Cuyahoga County, the largest urban area in the state. So I called them up and said, "Are you guys reporting the results?" And they said, "No, we will in 45 minutes. But CNN, based on the exit polls, had called the election for Clinton. So then they want to turn around and say, well, you can't call things on exit polls. They do it all the time. And that's what exit polls are designed for. They're trying to get you to believe that that's not possible. So there is a way to bring up a civil RICO. You can start a lawsuit, and if you get discovery and the necessary evidence, and it is in fact organized crime, it is in fact illegal collusion, and the Edison Research Group that's got a monopoly on the polling for the media consortium the four big broadcasting networks, CNN and the Associated Press, and they know that these numbers are corrupt and they're reporting them, I think you can make a case that they're engaged in organized crime.
That's what this feels like. It feels like we're
Well, that's
going
what it is.
organized. It does not feel
Make
like
no mistake about it.
organized
It's not an
violence.
accident, it's deliberate, and a lot of these techniques were really used in the Third World during the Cold War, where the CIA in the 70s admitted to rigging 5,000 local, state, and national elections.
So here we're at the end of our program. We'd like to thank trustvote.org, votetrust.org for the interview for Professor Petrakis, professor at Columbia State Community College in Ohio. Common Cause Ohio, electionfraud2016.org are all parts and websites that you can contact in reference to this program. We are broadcasting from, in the last couple of minutes of our show, again to recapitulate what we've been speaking about. The idea is, as Professor Bob Petrakis established, to file a suit against the Democratic Party or operatives of the Democratic Party for stealing the election, the primary ballots, the primary voting process in the state primaries and caucuses. Locally, you have standing. In other words, you have the right to file a suit. You have the possibility of filing a suit if you're a citizen of that state. If you had registered to vote or attempted to register to vote, you can file a suit. The idea is filing a suit in your own name, filing it as a pro se litigant. You don't have to be an attorney. The idea is to file a suit as a class action so that others in your community, in your state, whose rights have been violated in the same